Thank you. That concludes the panel testimonies. We'd like to now be able to ask some questions. First of all, regarding these maritime disputes, both in the South China and East China Seas, in light of this month's reports that China is building artificial islands and potentially building up military installations, what is the administration's response to that? And do you see it as effective? Start with you, Dr. Jackson. What are your thoughts? The younger?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So the administration has taken steps to shore up its alliances. It's taken its own credibility in the region seriously. The challenge is not so much with the United States sort of showing up or demonstrating resolve, short of violence or the threat of great violence. The larger issue is with the nuanced way that China is doing what it's doing. It makes it much easier to stand firm or retaliate whenever the Chinese send in the PLA Navy, right? Whenever they use traditional military force, it's easy to respond in kind. Signaling resolve and this kind of thing becomes a much clearer exercise. But when you're using unarmed drones, when you're pressing assertiveness with the construction of artificial islands or water cannons or any of these sort of non-traditional means, it creates this dynamic where it's very hard to respond without being seen as the bad guy, without being seen as escalatory yourself. I think there's a way to remedy this by sort of forcing operational transparency to the extent possible through cooperation, information sharing regimes with allies and partners. It's something that China can be a part of too if it wanted to. The question is, does it want to? And as long as China operates coercion within this gray space, transparency is really the only solution without sort of risking escalation, I think.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah, Dr. Jackson.
I would just say that to amplify the answer of my fellow Jackson member here, that China really follows, if you look at it in the long term, a take and then talk strategy. It's cyclical. The number of incidents go up in the South China Sea or in the East China Sea, and then if there's an APEC meeting coming in Beijing, suddenly things get quiet and Pacific again. And then I would assume we're moving into, in fact, we're in the middle of the next phase of a take strategy, which is the creation of new islands in the South China Sea. You know, this is a very difficult problem to deal with. It requires, in my opinion, that the administration provide more assistance to the Philippines, more diplomatic assistance, as well as military assistance. Thank you.
Thank you. Over the last few years, the tensions in the Taiwan Strait have de-escalated with the election of President Ma. He's facing some political challenges of his own, and recently there's speculation that the DPP candidate may gain a little bit of steam given some of his challenges. Any thoughts on, China's made no secret of its loathing of the DPP and what they stand for. If the DPP is successful in the next election, where do you see the Taiwan-China-U.S. relations going? Any thoughts? Mr. Denmark, did you want to address that?
Sure. Obviously, we're still quite a ways away from the next Taiwan presidential election, so it's difficult to speculate on who may win. But I do think that the mainland is being very careful to try to keep some space open in case a DPP candidate wins, so that they'd be able to maintain a relationship with Taiwan. They obviously recognize that it's going to be very complicated if the DPP wins the next presidential election in Taiwan. There's going to be a lot of concern in China that the next candidate would show some of the more more problematic tendencies that Chancellor Rayburn showed when the DPP was last in power. But I also think that the mainland would be trying to find a space that they can work with the DPP. So I expect them to be fairly quiet about the election. And I'm not trying to put anybody in a corner, but I do think that they're going to be very concerned about what happens. I also wanted to note that there's going to be some real challenges in the next election, and if whoever wins the next election in Taiwan, because of what's happened last year in Hong Kong, because of the framework that China talks about these systems of one country, two systems. Although the proposals are not exactly the same, there's some important differences, but there are some very important similarities as well. Enough similarities that I think in Taiwan there will be a lot of concerns and questions about this formulation of one country, two systems, and how Taiwan can position itself within that context.
I completely concur. In fact, I think the Taiwan body has been really watching with interest how this whole one country, two systems has played out. And it hasn't really played out the way that China said it would back in 1997. They have not been nearly as hands-off, especially within the selection of the CEO, as they said they would be. And it's prompted these protests and quite a bit of political unrest within Hong Kong. And I don't think that is helping their case at all with Taiwan as they seek a peaceful reunification at some point in the future. I think it bodes very ill for them. In fact, I'm going to be leading a Codel in May with Elliot Engel to Hong Kong specifically, for these purposes. So stay tuned.
Let's go to Ami.
I'll yield to Mr. Barrett.